All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanana, and in this video, we're going to talk about a big change that has been seen in Terence Crawford as he gets ready, hopefully, for the Errol Spence Jr. fight. And some people saying, hey man, don't make that mistake. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanan, and in this video, we're going to be in the 147-pound division talking about a fantasy fight. Because that's what it looks like it is about right now, but not everybody may realize that it is a fantasy fight. And that is Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford for the undisputed championship of the world at welterweight in the welterweight division. Errol Spence Jr. holds 3 of the belts, the WBA, the WBC, and the IBF. And Terence Crawford holds the WBO, and they are currently in negotiations to make a fight with one another. Now, I'm only jokingly calling it a fantasy fight. I'm saying that because I don't know whether the fight is going to get made or not. They very well may answer that. They may very well announce that next week, and we all can be happy or sad, depending on who you are, and the fight could happen. However, there is certainly a lot of note being taken about the appearance of the fighters going into the fight and what it looks like they're doing in preparation for that fight, because, you know, they're in the negotiation for the fight. The fight very well may be happening. So neither one of these guys looks like they're letting themselves get too far out of shape and, you know, want to be able to hit the ground running if and when the fight is made for their camps. But before I get into the details of what I'm going to talk about, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you're a longtime subscriber and a supporter of the channel, thank you so much for your ongoing support. It really does mean a lot. If you're new to the channel, please accept my invitation to hit that subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you can be notified of when we release more videos, which we do on a daily basis, both in the live stream format and in the video format. We do think you will really like the conversation. This is a boxing forum for boxing fans. So as long as you're respectful, there should be a lot of people there to address and get for you to have good conversations with in the comment section or in the live streams that we do. So, man, hit that subscribe. So let's get into this. Short of it is, man, Terence Crawford is looking big, man. Terence Crawford and many of his recent appearances have, to the eyes of many boxing fans, myself included, looks like he is putting on a considerable amount of weight heading into this Errol Spence Jr. fight. His neck looks pronounced, looks considerably bigger. His body frame looks bigger. He looks like he is definitely very, very solid right now at 147 pounds. Looks almost as big as Errol Spence Jr. does when you look at pictures and things of Errol Spence Jr., which begs the question of why? Why is Terence Crawford looking that big? What is he trying to accomplish? And is it a mistake? I've talked to people in boxing, you know, and these are, you know, different trainers, fighters, right, at a local level, you know, just people that know the sport of boxing. And they were like, look, man, Terence Crawford was waking. Well, this is the idea. Terence Crawford, if you remember, back when it was 4 years ago, when Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford were next to each other and they were arguing about the fight being made, I do believe that it was, what was he in Dallas for? I can't remember what the fight was, but it was a fight. It may have been a Jamel Herring fight, one of those fighters that are with Bomac and trained by B&B Gym out of Nebraska, out of Omaha, Nebraska. And Errol Spence Jr. and those guys started arguing, and Errol told him flat out, man, you too light in the ASS. You too light in the ASS, right? For me. And he looked, now Errol probably was a little bit big at the time, but he looked significantly bigger than than Terence Crawford did. So speculation is that Terence Crawford understands that is the case. And if you look at the Yordenis Ugas fight and the amount of power and the amount of pressure and the amount of punishment that Yordenis Ugas was taking during that fight, that Terence Crawford may feel that he needs to put on a little bit more weight, be a little bit more, little bit stronger in the body in order to take some of that punishment. So he should be focusing very much on building his strength and just being a little bit more bulky going into the fight to be able to absorb some of that pressure. Now, the opposite side, or not the opposite, the issue with that could be where people would say, look, is that going to slow him down in the fight with Errol? You know, one of the things, according to Mike Tyson, that Terence Crawford needs to do is Terence Crawford needs to be very, very mobile in that fight, needs to be able to stay on the outside, be able to pick his shots, right? Be able to like set up, Errol Spence Jr. for counters. And if he is not able to move on a consistent basis and keep Errol at range because he may be more flat-footed, because, everything that you do, you put on pounds, that's going to affect you. And typically it'll affect your foot speed. It may help with your ability to take punishment, but it may prevent you from moving away from the punishment. Also may actually affect your quickness a little bit. So, when people add on a lot of weight, you got to be real careful, right? Similar to what took place with Deontay Wilder when he fought Tyson Fury in the third fight, where you really saw him put on a ton of weight, like he was weighing, I think maybe the fight before, he was weighing somewhere around 220. He came in at make sure I say the numbers right, 220. But then he came in at against Deontay Wilder at 230, like 235, something like that, 15 or 20 pounds heavier. And you could really see it in his upper body. But at the time of the fight, it wound up weighing him down and his endurance really wasn't there. And that could be in part because he was carrying so much more muscle and maybe he put that muscle on, a little bit too quickly and it can affect him. Right. You see that with Canelo Alvarez. As Canelo Alvarez moves up in weight and bulked up, he looks significantly slower of foot. Right. And that's something that Terence Crawford probably cannot afford. Now, my look at it is, though, that look, Terence Crawford, like, first of all, just to see him looking in his clothes doesn't mean looking bigger in his clothes. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to look bigger in that ring. That with Anthony Joshua, he's always looked slim. Like, people have always said, oh, look how the weight that he cut. Look at the weight that he cut going into this fight. And then when fight comes, he looks pretty much just as big as he did at any point in time. Same thing with Andy Ruiz. Andy Ruiz wearing a black shirt, punching people every time. Every time he wears a black shirt and sparring, people talk about, how much weight he's lost and all of that. But then he gets into the fight, takes his shirt off, and he looks the same as he always does, right? So some of that, some of the perception can be, or those pictures can be a little bit, deceptive, right? Or misleading, not purposely misleading, but just, make it look like, he's got a little bit more size than he really does. So, and at the end of the day, he's got to fight at 147. So he has to be around the same weight that he's been coming in at. So I don't think that that's going to affect him. And on top of it, even if he did like gain the weight and was a little bit more bulky, looked a little bit more strong, Terence Crawford has really not been moving. Terence Crawford's really not been moving as much as he did at 135 pounds, regardless. I mean, he's not really in recent fights really wasting a lot of motion. It's small steps back, looking for a counter, right? Edging back, waiting for a shot and looking for his favorite counters is what I've seen from him. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully we'll see it. Hopefully it's not a fantasy fight. But, I have if I was in Terence Crawford fans camp and all of that stuff, which I'm never accused of, I would say, hey, man, it's not that big a worry either way. Errol Spence Jr. looks the same way to me. Looks big, looks strong, much stronger in between fights and much more fit in between fights than I've seen him, in the other times that I've seen him in person, because I just recently saw him, relatively up close in person. So, I think it all may be up to the cameras. But anyway, that's my opinion on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Deuces.